Section 1 of Needwood Forest. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Needwood Forest by Francis Noel Clarke Mundy, Section 1. Needwood Forest, Litchfield, printed by John Jackson, 1776. Needwood Forest, Part 1. Needwood, if e'er my early voice hath taught thy echoes to rejoice, if e'er my hounds in opening cry have filled thy banks with ecstasy, if e'er arrayed in cheerful green our train hath decked thy wintry scene, ere yet thy wood wild walks I leave, my tributary verse receive. With thy own wreath my brows adorn, and to thy praises tune my horn. What green-robed nymph, all loose her hair, with buskined leg and bosom bare, steps lightly down the turfy glades, and beckons toward yon opening shades? No harlot form, dissembling guile with wanton air and painted smile, lures to enchanted halls or bowers, where festive vice consumes his hours. Her mild and modest looks dispense the simple charm of innocence, and a sweet wildness in her eye sparkles with young sincerity. Lead on, fair guide, ere wakes the dawn, with thee I'll climb the steepy lawn, with thee the leafy labyrinths trace, where dwells the genius of the place. His large limbs press a primrose bed, a moss-grown root sustains his head, and, listening to a druid's rhymes, he bends his eye on distant times, while troops of sylvan vassals meet to cast their garlands at his feet, and pipe and frisk in rings about, or parley with the hunter's shout. And now a fragrant shower he throws of blossoms from his curled brows, and rising waves his oaken wand, and bids yon magic scenes expand. First blush the hills with orient light, and pierce the sable veil of night. Green bends the waving shade above, and glistering dewdrops gem the grove. Next shine the shelving lawns around, bright threads of silver net the ground, and down the entangled brakes among the white rill sparkling winds along. Then, as the pausing zephyrs breathe, the billowy mist recedes beneath. Slow, as it rolls away, unfold the veil's fresh glories green and gold. Dove laughs and shakes his tresses bright, and trails afar a line of light. Now glows the illumined landscape round. Ye vulgar, hence, 'tis sacred ground. Hence to the flimsy walks of art, that lull but not transport the heart. Nature, O Muse, here sits alone, and marks these regions for thy own. Here her variety of joys nor season bounds, nor change destroys. Be mine the pride, though weak my strains, that first I wooed thee to these plains, where spring, in all her beauty dressed, but promises a brighter guest, where summer yields her greens and flowers to autumn's variegated bowers, smiles winter as their honors fall, and bids his hollies shame them all. Ye sage professors of design, whose systems stubborn rules confine, can science here one blemish show, or one deficient grace bestow. Emes, who yon desert wild explored, and to its name the scene restored, whose art is nature's law maintained, whose order negligence restrained. Here, fired by native beauty, traced the footsteps of the goddess Taste. One from her coy retreats she came, and led him up these paths to fame. Here every flower improves the gale, from the meek violet of the vale to her who flaunts in air sublime the woodbine, queen of summer's prime. While each delicious shade may vie with those of boasted Arcady, there sweet varieties appear of thickets shaped by nibbling deer, of hills that swell with gradual ease, wood-skirted lawns and scattered trees, of valleys seen down distant glades that break the mass of mingling shades, while nature's attribute, extent, crowns each inferior ornament. On this green unambitious brow, fair mistress of the vale below, with sloping hills enclosed around, their heads with oaks and hollies crowned, with lucky choice by happy hands, placed in good hour my dwelling stands, and draws the distant traveller's eye, enamored of its scenery, where all things give what all express, content and rural happiness, where far retired from life's dull form comes no intruder but the storm that with contrasted lour endears the fair, the silent hour. Thus their wise days our fathers led, fleet ran their hounds, their arrows sped, and jocund health with rosy smile looked on, companion of their toil, till tyrant law usurped the land, stretched o'er the woods his iron hand, forbade the echoing horn to blow, maimed the staunch hound, and snapped the bow. Here with fair peace and modest fame they dwelt, who boasted Bagot's name. Go, Bagot, plead your country's cause, while senates listen with applause, with fearless truth and manly sense, detecting specious eloquence. Great talents to the world are due, retirement were a crime in you. Go and receive your oaken crown. Here, with no title to renown, leave me to loiter at my door beneath the spreading sycamore that canopies the sloping lawn, and view the deer at early dawn in troops come winding down the hill to taste fresh herbage near the rill, or count at noon their slumbering heaps, at evening watch their playful leaps, or hear the choiring of the grove give breath to harmony and love, or listen to the hum profound in the still air that floats around, or mark yon hill's extended side, where turf and shade the space divide. Here the wood straggles toward the plain, the pasture there prevails again, the heifer grazes on its brow, clamors the rook on trees below. Gay golden furs and purple ling around their mixed embroidery fling. O'er all, irregularly joined, the courting outline waves behind. No dusky cares o'erhang the bower, no passions wreck the halcyon hour. Nursed in the shade reflection springs, smooths her white plumes, and tries her wings. No leaf of autumn falls in vain, no flower bell droops beneath the rain, no bubble down the current flows, but life's uncertain tenure shows. Those thorns protect the forest's hopes, that tree the slender ivy props. Thus rise the mighty on the mean, thus on the strong the feeble lean. And yonder holly blush mankind, a rare fidelity I find. Like yours, though summer's flatteries end, my winter here hath found a friend. Hail, faithful favorite tree, to you the muse shall pay observance due. Whether in horrent files you stand, round sapling oaks a guardian band, or form aloft a sheltering bower, impervious to the sun or shower, whether to yon hillside you throng, ranging in various groups along, or on the plain maturely grown, you boldly brave the storm alone. Or tapering high with woodbines hid, rise in a fragrant pyramid. Your vigorous youth with upright shoots, your verdant age, your glowing fruits, your glossy leaves and columns gray shall live the favorites of my lay. Alas, in vain with warmth and food you cheer the songsters of the wood. The barbarous boy from you prepares on treacherous twigs his vicious snares. Yes, the poor bird you nursed shall find destruction in your rifled rind. Thus good and ill too often meet, and bitter mingles with the sweet. Ye pedagogues, let truant youth imbibe from you this generous truth, that one humane, one tender thought is worth the whole that schools have taught. End of section 1, read by Gerald Moe, Tucker, Georgia. Section 2 of Needwood Forest by Francis Noel Clarke Mundy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Part 2. With what fond gaze my eye pursues Needwood, thy sweetly varying views. Satyr or nymph or sylvan god, a fairer circuit never trod. Charmed as I turn, thy pictures seem the golden fabrics of a dream, where fiction stands with prism bright, rays forth her many-colored light, dyes the green herb and purple flower, gives glittering lustres to the shower, then gilds with livelier tints the sky, or bends her radiant bow on high. To scenes so elegantly wild, fancy of old her darling child from Avon's flowering margin brought, and Arden boasts what Needwood taught. Such shades by mazy paths perplexed, where strays the traveller inly vexed, inspired the muse of Spenser's pen, the wandering wood and error's den. Dwarfs, palfreys, dames, and giants rise, full on imagination's eyes. See, see the Saracen advance, the Red Cross knight hath couched his lance. They meet, the Christian wins the field, and bears away the faithless shield. With such companions fond to rove, I venerate each hill and grove, to Phoebus as to Dian dear, and find a new Parnassus here. Here might the sacred sisters dwell by pebbly brook or gushing well. Oh, let me listen as they sing in some close vale beside a spring, whose stream the intruding alder chides, where the wild bee her treasure hides. or sit in high embowering shade with contemplation heaven-eyed maid, where the scant sun through branches thin checkers the dark green floor within, where every leaf is wisdom's page, and each gray trunk a hoary sage, nor motion, human form, or noise this solemn pause of life destroys, save where the playful squirrel bounds, or ring-dove pours her plaintive sounds, or lurking peasant lops an oak, restraining half his pilfering stroke, or with his faggot stoops to rest both by his years and burthen pressed. Here, seen of old, the elfin race with sprightly vigils marked the place. Their gay processions charmed the sight, gilding the lucid noon of night. Or, when obscure the midnight hour, with glow-worm lanthorns hung the bower. Hark! The soft lute along the green moves with majestic step the queen. Attendant fays around her throng, and trace the dance or raise the song, or touch the shrill reed as they trip with finger light and ruby lip. High on her brow sublime is borne one scarlet woodbine's tremulous horn. A gaudy bee-bird's triple plume sheds on her neck its waving gloom. With silvery gossamer entwined stream the luxuriant locks behind. Thin folds of tangled network break in airy waves adown her neck. Warped in his loom the spider spread the far diverging rays of thread. Then round and round with shuttle fine inwrought the undulating line. One rose leaf forms her crimson vest, the loose edge crosses o'er her breast, and one translucent fold which fell from the tall lily's ample bell forms with sweet grace her snowy train, flows as she steps and sweeps the plain. Silence and night enchanted gaze, and Hesper hides his vanquished rays. Now the waked reed birds swell their throats, and night larks thrill their mingled notes. Yet hushed in moss with writhed neck the blackbird hides his golden beak. Charmed from his dream of love, he wakes, opes his gay eye, his plumage shakes, and stretching wide each ebon wing, first in low whispers tries to sing, then sounds his clarion loud and thrills the moon-bright lawns and shadowy hills. Silent the choral fays attend, and then their silver voices blend, each shining thread of sound prolong, and weave the magic woof of song. Pleased Philomena takes her stand on high and leads the fairy band, pours sweet at intervals her strain, and guides with beating wing the train, whilst interrupted zephyrs bear hoarse murmurs from the distant where, and at each pause is heard the swell of echo's soft symphonious shell. Nor the dread night my mind alarms, night and her horrors have their charms. O'er the wide forest off I roam, what time the traveller, far from home, bewildered in the pathless brakes, there his cold bed despairing makes, and hear the fox with savage bark pay distant courtship through the dark, the owl with faltering voice unfold her tale like one who shakes with cold, and then the alarmed woods resound the upbringings of the well-trained hound, who with tremendous tongue arraigns and haunts the plunderer of his plains. So cries from earth the life-blood spilt, so waking furies harass guilt. Oft have I through this solemn glade of old disremembered hollies strayed, whose bold, bare, rugged brows are seen thrust through the mantling evergreen. Tall, clustering columns here ascend, and there in Gothic arches bend, whilst as the silver moonbeams rise, imagined temples strike my eyes, with tottering spire and mouldering wall, and high roof nodding to its fall. His lantern gleaming down the glade, one like a sexton with his spade, comes from their caverns to exclude the midnight prowlers of the wood. Through fields of air, while pausing slow, yon death bell tells the village woe. Borne on her clouds, when darkness flings o'er the still air her raven wings, ere yet the watery freight descends, while heaven its purposes suspends. Night, let me stand in silent trance, and watch the lightning's kindling glance, while, stiffening at the imagined stroke, appears behind a brightened oak. From justice fled to this wild place, a conscious robber's ghastly face. Or fancy views with fear-fixed eye a mangled spectre gliding by, quick with the flash, who seems to wave his pale hand, beckoning to a grave. And, as the fleeting vision dies, loud thunders shake the closing skies. Night, when rude blasts thy scenes deform, O place me in the perilous storm, while the moon, laboring through the clouds, by turns her light reveals and shrouds. Torn from its trunk, when whirlwinds bear the twisted ash aloft in air, and some vast elm's uprooted spoil plows in its headlong fall the soil, while as he stalks through groaning oaks, at intervals the old deer croaks, and the lean sow with paps drawn dry o'er rustling leaves trots whining by. Then posts across the blasted plain, borne on the wild storm, witchcraft's train, aghast with guilt and shrunk with age, and yelling with demonic rage, with eyes turned black, malign and wide, see blood-stained murder silent stride. A moonbeam's sudden light expands, he starts and hides his crimson hands, and now the cauldron gleams afar, fired by a baneful meteor's glare. Around they dance, they pause, and pour the mischiefs of the midnight hour, while trembling fiends with wonder gaze, stretch their black wings, and fan the blaze. End of Part 2, read by Gerald Moe, Tucker, Georgia. Section 3 of Needwood Forest by Francis Noel Clarke Mundy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Part 3. Ere night withdraws her starry train, I print long traces o'er the plain, and bend my eyes to yon bright east, to meet the morning's radiant guest, as o'er the hills his golden rays burst through the thicket in a blaze. Now from my foot the startled fawn bounds to its parent on the lawn, and the waked lark exulting springs, hangs high in air on quivering wings, chaunts his loud transports o'er the heath, and eyes his listening loves beneath. Oft shall my Talbot hither stray, and friendship give new joys to day. On him his blooming bride attend, hither her graceful footsteps bend, fresh life her brighter beauties fling o'er the young dawn and blossomed spring. They come, their eddying wheels resound, the harnessed coursers proudly bound, the light-hung chariot floats in air, and laughing Hymen wreathes the pair. As o'er the daisied lawns they move, by glittering rill or dusky grove, old Needwood calls his softest gale, bids all his fragrant buds exhale. His gazing herds around them throng, his plighted birds suspend their song. Each on her urn his naiads lean, and wood nymphs peep from alleys green. Where this gay mount o'erlooks the wood, charmed with the scene a monarch stood, called these fair plains the richest gem that decked his triple diadem. Awhile the cares of state forgot, and with its name adorned the spot. Down yon meridian fields afar, when Mercia led her chiefs to war, fell in 1 hour 3 monarchs brave, and Lichfield's bower protects their grave. Her stately spires amidst the skies, tinged by the orient sun, arise, with golden veins invite the gale, triumphant ladies of the vale. Down yon mid-vale the British Nile, fair Dove, comes winding many a mile, and from his copious urn distills the fatness of 1,000 hills. Swell, generous river, leave thy banks, the thirsty soil shall give thee thanks. The generous river swells and leads his water o'er impoverished meads, and lays his ample treasure down, rich emblem of thy bounty brown. Pleased on yon high abode I gaze, whence Candish foaming Dove surveys, and where those humbler vales extend of thine, Fitzherbert, cheerful friend, or mark upon yon round ascent the social flag and open tent, where life's smooth paths with sweets are strown, and mirth makes every hour its own. Where spreads this grove its umbrage wide, late the bold outlaw fought and died. Oft in its dark recess the oak had fallen beneath his secret stroke. Full many a deer the night's dim ray beheld his silent arrow slay. Deep firs concealed the fawns in vain, and lust of lucre thinned the plain. Here, by no power before controlled, he met a forester as bold. O'er the fierce conflict frowned the wood, and drank with thirsty roots his blood. Yon banks demand a pitying look, where life a gentler breast forsook. Sole comfort of an aged pair, the true love of a damsel fair. At prime of dawn he stepped away, long was the journey, short the day. The wintry blast blew loud and chill, night caught him on the unsheltered hill. Fatigued he fell, no help came nigh, his faithful dog alone was by, who, as he fondly licked his cheek, heard his expiring master speak. Heap not for me thy cottage fire, cold grows my heart, unhappy sire, but turn to my unfinished loom, and weave the web, and bear it home. Prepare not, dame, my evening meal, but bid them ring my passing peal. Deck not thyself, dear maid, to meet thy love, but bring his winding sheet. I come not to your festive cheer, ye comrades, place me on my bier. The morrow found him stiff and pale, mournful the muse recounts his tale. Her stately tower there Hanbury rears, which proudly looks o'er distant shires. Down the chill slope and darkened glade projects afar its length of shade, assails the skies with giant force, and checks the whirlwind in its course. Or, when black clouds involve the pole, disarms the thunders as they roll. Beneath how nature throws around grand inequalities of ground, while down the dells and o'er the steeps the wavy line of Paphos creeps. With awful sorrow I behold yon cliff that frowns with ruins old. Stout farers there kept faithless ward, and gaunt performed his castle guard. There captive Mary looked in vain for Norfolk and her nuptial train. Enriched with royal tears the dove, but sighed for freedom, not from love. 'Twas once the seat of festive state, where high-born dames and nobles sat, while minstrels, each in order heard, their venerable songs preferred. False memory of its state remains in the rude sport of brutal swains. Now serpents hiss and foxes dwell amidst the mouldering citadel, and time but spares those broken towers in mockery of human powers. Yon hill that glows with southern rays, all conscious of superior praise, swells her smooth top and pastures green, and of her sisters seems the queen, proud from her ancient seats to trace the lineage of a generous race. That generous race, fair Sudbury cries, is mine, and bids her turrets rise, lifts from the lap of peace her dome, where finds munificence a home. Then wide her shining lake she leads, through blossomed groves and emerald meads, clothes with dark woods the distant scene, and pours her dappled herds between. Ah me, what sudden sadness lowers o'er her faint front and vernal bowers! There sinks to her untimely tomb a virgin flower in beauty's bloom. Oh, thou wast all that youth admires, a parent loves, or friend desires. I knew thee well, my sorrowing heart bears in thy loss a bitter part. Whilst the sad muse in plaintive verse strews all her flowers around thy hearse, let pity quit thy grave, and go a mourner to yon house of woe. There from thy father's bosom break sighs which too eloquently speak. Thy mother weeps, but weeps resigned, in all things noble, most in mind. Pale griefs thy sister's cheeks invade, and one, alas, too tender maid, holds a long melancholy strife betwixt her sorrows and her life. Thy manly brothers strive to cure, in vain, the pangs themselves endure. Fair saint, a happier lot is thine, reposed beneath the silent shrine. Now let me seek in pensive mood the rude recesses of the wood, and, where congenial gloom extends, think of lost hopes and distant friends, of scenes whose pleasures fled too fast, and hours most valued now they're past. Beside me lies a dingle deep, with shaggy banks abrupt and steep. Through vistas wild my course I bend, till daylight opens at the end, where from intoxicating height bursts the wide prospect on my sight. The terrace bold on which I stand steps broad and forward on the land. Rude hills compose the sidelong scene, with crofts and cottages between. The various landscape onward spreads o'er cultured plains and verdant meads, and seats and towns and hamlets rise, where yon smoke curls into the skies, and spires that pierce through tufted trees, till, faintly fading by degrees, beyond, in wild confusion tossed, the hills' blue tops in clouds are lost. Yes, Eaton banks, in vain I strive to hide the grief your oaks revive. Bow thy tall branches, grateful wood, afford me blossom, leaf, and bud. He for whose memory these I blend, thy late lost master, was my friend. Fall, gentle dews, fresh zephyrs breathe, spread cooling shades, preserve my wreath. Alas, it withers ere its time, so faded he in manly prime. But virtue, scorning friendship's aid, rears her own palms which never fade. End of section 3, read by Gerald Moe, Tucker, Georgia. Section 4 of Needwood Forest by Francis Noel Clarke Mundy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Part 4. Henry, O leave whilst youth is ours, and health leads on the fleeting hours. O leave awhile the court you grace, and urge with me the sylvan chase. Oft as I bathe in morning's breath, ere wakes the plover on the heath, ere the sun robs the woodbine's smell, or dries the foxglove's purple bell, I hear the deep-mouthed thunder rise, the monarch of the woodland flies, whilst the loud triumphs of the horn on breezy wings are backward borne. His subject mates no succour lend. What tyrant ever found a friend? He dies, the satiate echoes cease, the forest reassumes its peace. Now sunburnt autumn with his spoils Diana's bleeding altar piles. Again the slaughtering gun is heard, and wildly screams the parent bird. All night she mourns her lessened brood, still views them fluttering in their blood. With timorous call the rest collects, and with quick wing their flight directs. Now the strong buck his rival drives, and awes with jealous threats his wives. Slow move the kine to fresher fields, the hawthorn to the holly yields. No twittering swallow skims the plain, no shrite cock tunes his echoing strain. Dumb are the full-plumed songsters all, save the lone redbreast on my wall. Thy tender lay, sweet bird, prolong, and soothe old winter with thy song. When wintry mists obscure the skies, his busy nose the spaniel plies. Where mossy glades and thickets brown tempt the far-wandering woodcock down. Stretch thy strong wing, thy flight retake, nor trust the inhospitable brake. Ah, forced from the luxuriant ground, he mounts and feels the sudden wound. So transmeridian Zealand views adventurous Europe's wandering cruise. Fierce hunger eyes the stranger guest, and fraud secures the barbarous feast. Stained are the rocks with human gore, and white with scattered bones the shore. The leveret, but I spare the rest, I see compassion touch thy breast. Come then, and whilst the murderous crew in harmless blood their hands imbrue, roused to revenge by ravaged flocks, haste we to find the kennelled fox. Hark, those preluding cries he hears, thick beats his heart with conscious fears. Some tyrant thus, in luckless hour, whom fraud or force has raised to power, with throbbing heart and pale eye stands, and spreads to heaven his harpy hands, when freedom's voice alarms the morn, and vengeance winds her echoing horn. See, with the wind he scours away, sleek, and in crimes grown old and gray. Oft has he foiled our angry pack, I know his customary track. Talk not of pity to such foes, stern justice claims the life he owes. No storms arise to screen his flight, 'tis long till interrupting night, the breathing south his sentence gives, and not an hour the caitiff lives. Through woods and hills and vales and brakes, Needwood with gentle transport shakes. Mark how the pack diffusely spread, and shew me, if you can, their head. 'Tis here, 'tis there, now onward far streams down the vales irregular. As through the furzy brakes they drive, the trembling coverts seem alive. Thus by the winds o'er bending corn, loose waves of light and shade are borne. Now winding up yon steep they strain, now wheel in silence on the plain. Again they catch the tainted wind, no hound disgraceful lurks behind. All striving with confederate aim, their size, their power, their speed the same. With eager eye and clamorous tongue, in broad career they press along. Fierce on their victim gathering round, he suffers by no single wound. Thus o'er the azure fields of night shoot the quick rays of northern light. To one bright point converged they flow, and round the silver zenith glow. So, when a lake surcharged by rain bursts and o'erwhelms the sloping plain, the wondering rustic flies, nor knows which of its currents fastest flows. Now here the rattling eddies lead, now there they foam along the mead, till in a silent pool they stand, collected on the hollow land. Go, languid fops, go, pedants, waste your sneers on joys you cannot taste, and cloak with many a vain pretense cold-blooded fear and indolence. Warm to each elegant delight, ingenious, sensible, polite, known to the world you know so well, loved even by those who you excel. Meynell, my leader and my friend, stand forth, the manly chase defend. O raise your animated voice, and cheer the Dian of your choice. Not her whose foul Circean draught squires of preceding ages quaffed, unleaded reveller whose joys were rudeness, turbulence, and noise, but her no less of British kind, well-bred, intelligent, refined, of younger years and purer mold, chaste as the huntress queen of old. Yes, I am thine, enchanting maid, come in thy decent robes arrayed. O bring thy blithe companion Health, who smiles and mocks the sluggard Wealth, and Hope, whose spleen and care destroys, and Rapture scorning tamer joys. Young Eagerness with kindling eyes, and triumph mingling jocund cries. Come, as thy cheerful train is seen, where Foremark waves his woodlands green, when hears his vale thy matin song, and Trent exulting shouts along, while wait thy gay return to greet, convivial mirth and welcome sweet. On me thy humbler votary shower the balmy dews of every flower, which oft thy curious hand hast twined thy birdet's favourite brows to bind. End of Part 4, read by Gerald Moe, Tucker, Georgia. Section 5 of Needwood Forest by Francis Noel Clarke Mundy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Part 5. Whence, Needwood, that tremendous sound? Low, dying murmurs run around. A deeper gloom the wood receives, and horror shivers on the leaves. Loud shrieks the hern, the raven croaks. Destruction's arm arrests thy oaks. Onward with giant strides he towers, dooms with dread voice thy withering bowers. High o'er his head the broad axe wields, stamps with his iron foot, and shakes the fields. When from her lawless rocks and sands Arabia pours her ruffian bands, the village hinds in wild distress around some holy hermit press, orb within orb their wrongs declare, and ask his counsel and his prayer. All white with age, inspired he stands, and lifts to heaven his wrinkled hands. So seems the affrighted forest, drawn in crowds around this lonely lawn. High in the midst, with many a frown, huge Swilcar shakes his tresses brown, outspreads his bare arms to the skies, the ruins of 6 centuries. Deep groans pervade his rifted rind, he speaks his bitterness of mind. Your impious hands, barbarians, hold, ye pause, but fired with lust of gold, your leader lifts his axe, and like a cursed Julius, bids you strike. Deaf are the ruthless ears of gain, and youth and beauty plead in vain. Loud groans the wood with thickening strokes. Yes, ye must perish, filial oaks. In heaps your withered trunks be laid, and wound the lawns ye used to shade, whilst avarice on the naked pile exulting casts a hideous smile. Strike here, on me exhaust your rage, nor let false pity spare my age. No pity dwells with sordid slaves, 'tis want of worth alone that saves. Yes, ye will leave me with disdain a mouldering landmark on the plain, where many a reign my trunk hath stood, proud father of the circling wood. In freedom's dearest days I grew, and Henry's jealous nobles knew. I saw them pierce the bounding game, and heard their horn announce the claim. No more, beneath my favourite shade, the forest youth and village maid shall meet to plight their troth, and mark their love memorials on my bark. Yet, fond hope, thy distant light beams unexpected on my sight. Lo, Vernon hastes, the common friend, the affrighted forest to defend, bids the keen axe the saplings spare, and makes posterity his care. Yes, joy shall see these scenes renewed, shall wake his sister gratitude, shall call on lawns and hills and dells the silent echoes from their cells. Long trains of golden years proclaim, and Needwood ring with Vernon's name. He ceased, and shook his hoary brow. Glad murmurs fill the vale below. The deer and gambols bound along. The plighted birds resume their song. Thrice venerable Druid, hail! O may thy sacred words prevail. May Needwood's oaks successive stand, the lasting wonder of the land. And may some powerful bard arise, though heaven to me that power denies, the Pope or Denham of his days, whose lofty verse shall match their praise. Finis. End of Section 5. Read by Gerald Moe, Tucker, Georgia. Section 6 of Needwood Forest by Francis Noel Clarke Mundy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Responses to Needwood Forest. Addressed to Swilcar Oak, described in Mr. Mundy's poem on Needwood Forest. Hail, stately oak, whose wrinkled trunk hath stood age after age, the sovereign of this wood. You who have seen 1,000 springs unfold their ravelled buds and dip their flowers in gold. 10,000 times yon moon relight her horn, and that bright eye of evening gild the morn. Say, when of old the snow-haired druids prayed with mad-eyed rapture in your hallowed shade, while to their altars bards and heroes throng, and crowding nations join the ecstatic song, did e'er such dulcet notes arrest your gales as Monday pours along the listening vales? Yes, stately oak, thy leaf-wrapped head sublime, ere long must perish in the wrecks of time. Should o'er thy brow the thunders harmless break, and thy firm roots in vain the whirlwinds shake, yet must thou fall, thy withering glories sunk, arm after arm shall leave the mouldering trunk. But Mundy's verse shall consecrate thy name, and rising forests envy Swilcar's fame. Green shall thy gems expand, thy branches play, and bloom for ever in the immortal lay. E.D. A rural coronation, inscribed to Mr. Mundy on reading his poem on Needwood Forest. Haste from your dells, your woods and lawns, nymphs, naiads, satyrs, fays, and fauns. Haste, hither bring your flowers and boughs, and weave a wreath for Mundy's brows. First twigs of oak from Swilcar rend, and round his auburn temples bend, then tie the ends that twisting meet with tendrils from the woodbine sweet. With laurel blossoms next be spread pale ivy crosswise o'er his head. These holly sprigs insert between, the berries blush amid the green, while harebells blue and lilies fair, mixed with the wild rose, deck his hair. Now with fantastic step advance, and hand in hand around him dance, to oaten pipe attune his lays, and hail the bard who sings your praise, while the gay choirings of the grove give breath to harmony and love, and golden furs and purple ling around their mixed embroidery fling, and all irregularly joined the according outline waves behind. A.S. Sonnet. Mundy, whose song hath taught the forest swain to view fair Needwood through the radiance clear of bright imagination, taught the tear to glisten in his eye for others' pain, and owned that taste and virtue are not vain, How was thy pipe melodious wont to cheer the wintry groves when every leaf was sere, and brighten summer with its artful strain? Say, by what mead shall Needwood court thy stay? She unsuspecting twines in amorous care her favourite holly and her flower bells grey, to deck with modest hand her lover's hair. Ah, do not thou her gentle hope betray, and doom her tender blossom to despair. B. On Mr. Mundy's Needwood Forest. Where Needwood's banks embroidered smile on bright-haired dove the British Nile, pleased Mundy fixed his easel strong, and stretched his canvas wide and long. Broad o'er his hand the palette lies, with pencils for 1,000 dyes. He looked and drew and looked again. Enamored fancy snatched the pen. Nymphs, graces, loves around him throng, with all the sisterhood of song. Bright tints by fairy hands were mixed, and witchcraft etched the shades betwixt. Delighted Flora smiled and drew the primrose pale and violet blue. A naiad spreads the flake of snow, white foams the glittering stream below. Give me the palette, love demands, and stretching forth his baby hands, dipped with nice touch his keenest shaft, and all the blushing lakes, and laughed. With sweetest grace the pencil flowed, with softest tints the canvas glowed. I'll draw Mama, the wanton cries, and Talbot's features charm our eyes. With airy ease the white neck bends, lock after lock the hair descends. O'er the fair form the graces spread their vest, and Hymen wreathes the head. And then Thalia, muse of woe, moves o'er the woof her crayon slow. Here, cold, bewildered, tired, forlorn, the traveller sighs in vain for morn. Stretched on the imprinted snow he lies, and bends on heaven his stiffening eyes. There friendship sits the shade beneath, and twines for Clarke a fadeless wreath. Fresh cypress with the flowers she weaves, and many a teardrop gems the leaves. Next o'er the lawn a virgin throng in sad procession moves along. Lorn loves inverted torches bear, and pity weeps o'er Vernon's bier. To shade the distant ground and lay the raising group in bolder day, a dryad chalks some dusky strokes, behind umbrageous frown her oaks, and Swilcar, rent by many a storm, rears high in air his leafless form. Pleased Mundy stood with eager eyes, and watched the living figures rise, smiled as the varying colors flowed, and sighed by turns, and chilled and glowed, and to the admiring world has shewn the immortal tablet for his own. E.D. June. End of Section 6, read by Gerald Moe, Tucker, Georgia. Section 7 of Needwood Forest by Francis Noel Clarke Mundy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 7, The Fall of Needwood. Part 1. The Fall of Needwood, Derby, printed at the office of J. Drury, 1808. The Fall of Needwood. Ah, Needwood, I, whose early voice taught thy shrill echoes to rejoice, I, who first poured the sylvan song thy glades, thy banks, thy lawns along. I, who with artless pencil drew Thy forest charms of varied hue approach thee now with different strain, that mourns thy wrongs, yet mourns in vain. I come, but not with former haste, to view the dim, unsheltered waste that once was Needwood. On thy brow no green-robed wood-nymph beckons now, yet be thy spirit soothed to bear my requiem through the void of air. O Draycott Cliff, again thy height, known beacon of my young delight, with saddening thoughts that much portend of change and tumult, I ascend. Nor flattered by thy levelled way, that smiles like wordlings to betray how swells my aged heart, how near scenes to my happiest youth so dear, how sinks that heart as these arise, distorted to my anguished eyes. Where are those ample plains displayed, 'mong woods with many an opening glade? Where is the wild doe bounding by, once emblem of their liberty? No stragglers from the warren fleet scud cross my path with flirting feet. No jealous bloodhound, brave and proud, throws from the lodge his challenge loud. O hear me on thy summits tall, time-honored Needwood, hear my call. For thou my filial voice hast known. No answer follows. Hark, a groan. His ancient seats I seek in vain. He nor his ancient seats remain. But in strange horror staring round, a spectre pointing to his wound, of hideous shape with bald head, stalks before me o'er the ravaged walks, where desolation grim affrights shamed Ceres in unhallowed rites, where the checked plunderer shrinks aside as by his own deed terrified, or fears from many a faithful root vengeance in ambush at his foot. Wavering alike in mind and pace, I roam, familiar haunts to trace. The winds that bow me as I go rush unrestrained as wild with woe, or querulously vexed to miss the blooming groves they loved to kiss. Each spot discovered has its tale, seems a friend's voice in every gale. Waked recollection starts aghast, and thoughtful sighs o'er pleasures past. When nature with exulting smile formed from her stores this happy isle, curious and bounteously intent to raise a central ornament, she culled the brightest and the best, and heaped them on her darling's breast. Sprung joyful to her warm embrace the appointed genius of the place. His features fair young beauty drew, on her soft lap the fondling grew. The seasons came his birth to greet, and poured their choicest at his feet. The dryads quaintly curled his locks, nymphs, fauns, and satyrs rushed in flocks, pleased in such fairy land to dwell, and peopled every bower and dell. Kings marked the consecrated ground, and power protective watched around. Long Mercia sat beside enthroned, and prouder crowns its honors owned. Delighted ages listening heard the wild hoof-beat, the tainted sword, the gladdening hound and echoing horn, and hunters' shouts far onward borne. How did his dignity excel! Blush, blush ye times when Needwood fell. 'Twas avarice with his harpy claws, great victim, rent thy guardian laws. loosed uproar with his ruffian bands, bade havoc show his crimsoned hands, grinned a coarse smile as thy last deer dropped in thy lap a dying tear, exulted in his schemes accursed, when thy pierced heart, abandoned, burst, and, glozing on the public good, insidious demon, sucked thy blood. Detested ever be that day which left thee a defenseless prey. May never sun its presence cheer, oh, be it blotted from the year. Where now the forest freeman's boast, his joys, his hopes, his name are lost. Repentant claimants of the soil, yours keen remorse and thankless toil. Strangers and hirelings snatch the spoil. Too late ye mourn your glory gone, too late the deed yourselves have done. Thus fell Ohai's senseless crew, him, their best friend, their idol, slew. Shared his torn limbs with savage pride, then grieved, infatuate, that he died. Ah, who but knows and loves the lay which Seward hung on Cook's moray? Oh, had I such melodious tear, lamented Needwood, for thy bier. Forests of England, ye might claim a proud share in her ancient fame. Tell your forgetful country, tell, when dangers dread her state befell, how rushed your sons in hardy bands, their long bows in their skilful hands. How far the foremost and the best on fierce invading foes they pressed. With what sure aim their arrows flew, whistling the death song ere they slew. You, in your secret labyrinths, spread your dark shields o'er great Alfred's head. True to your charge, the ruthless Dane brandished his reeking blade in vain. 'Twas yours to nurse that mighty mind where every virtue sat enshrined. Your hushed leaves parted as the beams of glory shot and fired his dreams. You fanned his patriot bosom's glow, you tuned his harp, you trimmed his bow. He imagined in your wolves his foes, and practiced vengeance keener rose. Your proud oaks leaned to court the hand which England's conquering navy planned. Your songbirds taught him to convey mild manners in attractive lay. While Liberty, the nymph you love, braided the silken bands he wove. On circled lawns in secret glade, you marshaled thousands to his aid, then gave him from your woods to shine a Caesar and an Antonine. There the bright wreaths of victory grew, and Themis plucked her wand from you. Roused vigorous by the morning air, so quits the monarch's stag his lair. With fresh frayed beams his rival seeks, his meditated vengeance wreaks, and, stamping on the mountain's brow, claims homage from the vale below. On yonder castled cliff of old, Needwood, how thronged thy archers bold, when there, for deeds of arms arrayed, his banner princely gaunt displayed. And filled they not his chosen ranks on distant Ebro's olived banks? Spain's boasted slingers, soon ye fled from English bowmen, forest bred. Fame staked her dearest honors there, and won not Needwood's sons their share. Illustrious history, bear me back up golden time's recorded track, and bring from thy illumined page the heroes of that martial age, when knightly valor's own right hand sought fame and spoil and high command. say as they pass in bright review, what favourite takes precedence due. They come, the pride and pomp of war, mark their disastrous course afar. Ah, while the maddening trumpet brays, fields reek with blood and cities blaze. Fell cries for glory or a crown, the shrieks of wives and orphans drown. See English Richard's crest advance, back from the lightning of his lance. Hark, nations hail in loud accord his lion heart and victor sword. Cease, cease thy boasting, clarion vain, truth gives my lyre a purer strain. Blush, as thy people, haughty king, shout for the man thy minstrels bring, and offer, with less guilty claim, a forest yeoman's humble name. How sweetly pours that bugle shrill its mellow tones o'er dale and hill, as Sherwood's hero down the glade steps with his bow and bright brown blade. His feathered arrows broad and keen hung lightly o'er his gown of green. A robber, say'st thou, thy harsh laws, oppressor, and the poor man's cause led him, indignant, to the wood, with bold pretence of rights withstood. Churls, with no feeling but for self, yield to his better hands your pelf. Such trespass fear disdains to hide, and hoodwinked justice peeps aside. The liberal air his freeborn soul lifts high in scorn of base control. In fellowship and fealty bound, firm as the knights of Table Round, him and his 100, tall and fleet, not twice 200 care to meet. Minions oppose not his career, he seeks no slaughter but of deer. Yet will he pass unquestioned by, raise but your weapons and ye die. Start not, fair maids, your path pursue, unharmed, he guards its peace for you, and cheers on each occasion kind, in age or want, the hamlet hind. Here, warriors, to the forest turn, true courage and its use to learn. Here, nobles, to the wood resort, for courtesy unknown at court. Needwood, this brave man was thy guest, love crowned the day, and mirth the feast. Region where all delights were found, how look'st thou now? A burial ground, with sad memorials here and there, of what was noble, free, and fair. King's Standing, with a tortured frown, marks its own splendor overthrown. What air of wood or lawn could please? What air of hills that ranged with ease, in grand assemblage broad displayed, this far commanding mount surveyed? How changed those oaks that towered so high, dismembered, stripped, extended lie. On the stained turf their wrecks are piled, where 1,000 summers basked and smiled. In smoldering heaps their limbs consume, the dark smoke marks their casual tomb. From blackened brakes the choked winds toss the ashes of the golden goss, while great with power yon wretch derides and boasts the mischief which he guides. Thus, when, in unsuspecting peace, rushed Scythia's hordes on fertile Greece, Mars, their grim god, whom heaven abhors, urged with fell taunts to wasteful wars. Valley where Mare Brook, all unveiled, her slender line far shining trailed, with frequent curves thy slopes between, as loath to quit the enticing scene, or turning with young fawns to play, wily and volatile as they, alluring with her tinkling sweet from bank to bank their timid feet. Loved valley, now no charm invites my steps to rove these injured heights. Thy wavy knolls the fence arrests, the rude spade wounds thy swelling breasts. Rent her fair locks and mantle rich, forlorn along that hateful ditch. Thy violated naiad steals, and in foul streams her shame conceals. These broad roots bore a secret grove, where I was wont at eve to rove, and while low-thoughted cares retired, wrapped in fond musings, fancy-fired, saw what alone the mind's eye sees, heard other whisperings than the breeze, and knights and dames and dwarves portrayed, and bright arms gleaming down the glade, drew magic, muttering powerful spell, and witchcraft with demonic yell. Hark, the last trunk that axe assails, see, the plough tears the writhing veils. Stop, thoughtless clown, nor dare to bring destruction on that fairy ring, imprinted deep with stainless green and lasting beauty seldom seen. Even winter paused that turf to spare, nor looked the fiery dog-star there. And once more may Titania come with farewell to her ancient home. But for the bee-bird's gaudy plume waved o'er her neck in quivering bloom, funeral spray of dismal hue, of cypress or the baleful yew, joined with the nightshade's deadly flower, shall darkly o'er her forehead lower. Attendant fays in mournful throng nor trace the dance nor raise the song, while for the shrill reed's cheerful sound that led them lightly tripping round, beetles and drones with hummings low measure their footfalls sad and slow. Alas, no gentle sprite remains, but foul fiends scour the affrighted plains, rob of their honours hills and lawns, trace the mean ditch that greedy yawns, and teach the reptile hedge to crawl, twin pests confederate, seizing all. End of Section 7, read by Gerald Moe, Tucker, Georgia. Section 8 of Needwood Forest by Francis Noel Clarke Mundy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Fall of Needwood, Part 2. What old man with his gray dog sits? What blind man by those sandy pits? 'Tis Manuel, and he rests him where my fox earth was his nightly care. Ah, come not now to scenes so drear, gay hunters, scenes ye cannot cheer. Ah, venture not their threats to brave, nor trample on your Needwood's grave. 'Tis Manuel, and he knows my voice, his tears, though not his eyes, rejoice. Reduced by age and loss of sight to beggary and the parish mite, that dog his only guide, he picks, groping in fear, those wretched sticks. But soon will such small gleamings end. Thou, Needwood, wast the poor man's friend. garden of nature, on whose face contented fragrance, bloom, and grace, kind nurse of her abundant good to human wants from herb or wood. Though seem the withering winds less rude than thoughtless man's ingratitude, not all thy children droop forlorn, hurled from magnificence to scorn. You, foxgloves, through the varying year, fresh, vigorous, and countless here. You, happy foxgloves, as you fell, in triumph closed each purple bell. Proud that the bark of famed Peru was rivaled, British plant, by you. Philosophy and science rare had pitied dropsy's sad despair, and poured your healing treasure forth, while their own bard extolled your worth. Poet and sage, hence doubly shine your honors on Hygeia's shrine, where pleased Apollo stooped to yield to Darwin's hand his lyre and shield. Again, to save this fair domain, a Vernon strove, but strove in vain, and many a noble heart was warm, the fell devourer's rage to charm. But mean self-interest lit the flame, blind furies fanned, and ruin came. Yet Limbrook prattles in her pride of ancient scenery on her side, calls, where her beauties still prevail, to Berkeley bowers and Yoxall dale, boasts of deep shades and alleys green, and bids me mark that forest mean, pleased in this circlet to secure her injured parent's miniature, and fain would cheer me as she leads by cultured banks to verdant meads, and spreads her mirrors to reflect how nature's handmaid, art, hath decked the matron here with choicest bloom. Ah, garlands now for Needwood's tomb. Limbrook, protected child and heir, enjoy thy patrimony fair, and ever in thy favored bound prosperity and peace be found. Yet long wilt thou lament the change of herds and flocks that near thee range, more loudly to thy rushes chide, since comes no doe her fawn to hide. And long thy murmuring stream will shrink, when stoops the stranger ewe to drink, and long those oaks, destruction spared, grieve for the greatness once they shared, and sigh while ages hence appear the tracks of their remembered deer, and scatter, careless, to the wind, fruits for their autumn feast designed. Thus, when that monster of the world thy nobles from their honors hurled, O France, a few to fate resigned, all lost but dignity of mind, still on the general wreck abide, terror and tyranny beside, and privileged in fallen estate walk humbly with the power they hate, regretful of their happier times, and sighing o'er a nation's crimes. Yet Berkeley bowers your Emma's art such sweet delusion can impart, such truth her curious pencil gives, that Needwood in its magic lives. Oh, haste to catch, ingenious maid, his remnant beauties ere they fade, so to the admiring world be shown fair forms accomplished like your own. Though aptly might these dells retain wild fancy and her sylvan train, I ask no fabled nymph to lend her idle aid as I descend. I seek not such attendance here, but hail your presence and revere truth, genius, science, Yoxall dale, 'mong forest walks distinguished hail. Enough that future times will say, here Gisborne penned his moral lay, practiced the duties he enjoined, led and instructed humankind. Here the high paths of nature trod, and saw and glorified her God. Gigantic hollies, many a year, your lopped limbs fed the pining deer, and many a year your growth renewed, and venerable solitude. With arch and column here you stood, as once the temple of the wood. The seasons wrought not on your form, you bent not to the battering storm. Arrested on each shrouded brow, no wanton sunbeams pried below. Respected veterans, favorite glade, oft as I paced your pensive shade, rapt meditation mused in prayer, or self-indulgence softened care. These Needwood thy destroyers saw and seized, unchecked by shame or awe. Fair virgin, in that hallowed gloom, while the bell knolled thee to thy tomb, I chose a polished trunk to mark thy memory on its yielding bark. As held in reverence profound, the grove was motionless around, save that an ivy's straggling leaf shook in the breathings of my grief, watched pity through her starting tears, numbering too soon thy transient years. Lorn loves that knew thee well were by, and sorrow with reverted eye. Yes, thou wast all that youth admires, a parent seeks or friend desires. Ah, if yet spared, to that lone shrine direct me some remaining sign, or whispering airs instruct to find, soft as ye kiss the swelling rind, or gentle redbreast hop before. No, those retirements are no more. See the grieved wood dove on her flight, and the scared owlet lost in light. Hark, the same bell, take, sister beer, affection's sigh and friendship's tear. These for ourselves, for thee, blessed shade. Amply thy debt of life was paid, and gentle as that life thy fall, rest honored as beloved by all. Rest while the parting virtues bear for heaven's a proof thy record fair, and yonder cloud that lowers above, darkening the cheerful face of dove. Their white plumes glimmer to the eye, and radiant arms extend on high. Yes, holly bush, endeared spot, forsaken long but ne'er forgot. Yes, holly bush, through all disguise I know thee but with watery eyes. With thee what warm emotions start, what passions press upon my heart. Quick rushes my own change to view, and wounds, yet tender, bleed anew. I come not now to treasured sweets, blank my approach, no welcome greets. No lifted sash, no smiling face salutes me, joyous from the chase. No ready grooms my call await, leaps on its hinge no friendly gate. Not for my meal that kitchen's blaze, thy people on a stranger gaze, and for the foxhound cowering bland, bays the fierce house dog at his stand. Yet, as my doubtful step withdraws, fresh memories plead for longer pause, while mixes with each faint farewell what only struggling sighs can tell. Yes, holly bush, here fled too fast, fair hours most valued now they're past. But not in my regard import these structures of a prouder sort, and former fondness ill can brook this ordered dress and inland look. Thy flowery copse and bowers may groom for alien shrubs and new perfume. Thy meek rill swells with glaring brim, thy rude paths march through gardens trim. Ah, here no unambitious brow, nor my contented dwelling now. But thou remainest, favourite tree, extend thy friendly canopy. Ah, know me, soothe me in my age, and cheer this mournful pilgrimage. Hall, whose kind arm is stretched between the spoiler and yon forest scene, its green vale with its wooded banks, and Needwood's honour owes thee thanks. Save too this suppliant at thy door, oh, save my spreading sycamore. It gave my window breezes sweet, and shelter when the tempest beat, when wild bees hummed its boughs among, or cooing stock-dove watched her young. Oft have I sat beneath its shade, and blessed my children as they played. Ah, let not taste with upstart pride this old domestic thrust aside. This relic, generous owner, spare to Needwood's earliest poet's prayer. So prosper here thy fair designs, so beauty lend thee her own lines, so here all social pleasures throng, and sweet enjoyment flourish long. Revelled Swilcar, kingly oak, ill spared from thee the assassin's stroke. How brilliant was thy sylvan court, of sons and subjects proud resort. Here stately ranged in close array, there lightly grouped on carpets gay. Attendant hollies glowed beneath, all armed, their crest a woodbine wreath. And safety skipped the dappled herds, securely perched the quiring birds. O'er chartered ground thy broad shade spread, in freedom waved thy sacred head. Where age had whitened many a stem, and placed an antlered diadem. Horrid, I see thee far defaced, in fetters on a dreary waste, with outstretched arms and bosom bare, appealing to the troubled air, yet taxing not the pelting storm, but those more cruel who deform thy rich retreats, thy turf defile with fence and road and uses vile. Nor of the whole which nature gave leave thee enough to make thy grave, when comes, as come it must, thy fall, Lear of the forest, robbed of all. Enough, and from my trembling hand drops the sad lyre, abused land. Take my last strains. In happier days I tuned my rude horn to thy praise, and all I wished, the friends I loved, those unassuming notes approved. And some, with strength beyond its own, in sweeter echoes cheered the tone, to swell this tear which sorrow drew. Do they remain? Alas, how few! Swilcar, from thee a withered bough will best become my temples now, and pendant here my shell I leave, mournfully mute, save when, at eve, while silence lists on brooding wings, soft airs shall brush the murmuring strings. So still be fond complaint preferred, its master's voice no longer heard. Then haply some who wander near, musing, may lend a partial ear. And if thy venerable age and awful size their hearts engage, if nature's wood-wild walks they love, if violated grandeur move, will not indignation rise, as fancy views with weeping eyes nymphs, satyrs, fauns in cheerless row, and Dian with a broken bow? Hears druids groan and dryads shriek, oft through the moonlight stillness break. Yon prisoned cliffs their griefs repeat, dove howling hoarsely at their feet. Region, I loved thee at my heart. Farewell, for ever now we part. Forest, farewell, delighted time, thee would have spared in endless prime. Me, as he shakes my ebbing sands, while mortal life her roll expands. Me, feebly bending o'er thy tomb, he beckons to her common home. Human weakness, may a name, aspiring to no splendid fame, live yet a little in my songs of Needwood's praise and Needwood's wrongs. End of section 8. Read by Gerald Moe, Tucker, Georgia. Section 9 of Needwood Forest by Francis Noel Clarke Mundy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Responses to the Fall of Needwood. My Grand Climacteric, 1802. As one who journeys over unknown lands, ere yet the sun withdraws his western ray, stops on some mountain's brow, whose sight commands the shifting scenes and labyrinths of the way, with fond reverted look his thoughts retrace, where flowers their sweets and wild birds gave their song, and dwell, long dwell, on many a favorite space, where prodigal of time he loitered long. Lovers and friends in bright perspective rise, companions of his morn, on yon blue hill. Down that bank plain he drops a look, and sighs, whence seem their parting words to reach him still. Here his pained eyes unkindly districts mark, where faint hearts smote him or fierce storms o'ertook. There strain o'er deepening woods at noonday dark, where his false steps their destined course forsook. Pondering the change and chances of the day, as warning Eve prepares her veil to close, serious he now proceeds with short survey, expecting night's dark hour and hoping calm repose. So I look back on more than 60 years in life's sequestered walks obscurely spent, where though its trophied head no column rears, inscribed with mighty deed or proud event, yet on some few small eminencies glow the heart's rejoicing lights of self-applause. Some generous claims surmount the gloom below, and shame and sharp regrets a moment pause. Yet these prevail. Might my wish prevail, that time would turn my near exhausted glass, then not a grain should of its harvest fail. Seeds are but sands when unimproved they pass. Vain wish, vain promise, what dost thou presume? O weak humanity, thyself but dust, since from the cradle hourly to the tomb, toil, trifle, err and grieve, frail thing, thou must. But pleasures, passions lose their dangerous force, and the world's business shrinks as age descends. Oh, spare adversity my evening course. My little part is played, my small importance ends. To F. N. C. Mundy, Esquire, on his poem, The Fall of Needwood. Poet of Needwood, much my heart approves this thy ode duty to his ravaged groves, the lost, the lovely, who in better days viewed their each grace reflected in thy lays. And oh, when many a future age has passed, rolling oblivious o'er his nameless waste, its sometime beauties shall again revive, and in thy pictured strains for ever live. Come, pensive, listening, ye once jocund throng, we'll home that roved these forest haunts along, explored, with pleasure brightening in your air, each coy, green labyrinth, and each turfy lair, still, as in pride of youth, the wanton spring expanded to the sun her showery wing, and cliffs, illustrious in their golden bloom, rose o'er the glades of light-besprinkled gloom. Nor absence ye when summer's fervid hours dropped more luxuriant curtains on the bowers, and the vaxed oak's writhed arms of dusky green shadowed the dappled tenants of the scene, with rival elm whose mossy trunk appears outnumbering far the lonely eagle's years. Nor when the months consummate left their vales to suns less ardent, less benignant gales, and autumn painted with his tawny hand the shrinking foliage, and in colors bland streaked the pale red with purple, faint and brief, and tipped with tarnished gold each trembling leaf. Nor e'en when Phoebe's steeds, no longer fleet, with mane dishevelled streaming to their feet, struggling through clouds thy vernal solstice gain, their necks be dropped with globes of freezing rain, and the loud tyrant of the dying year stripped other groves, made other forests fear, for Needwood to his sway disdained to yield his polished umbrage and unfailing shield. Those numerous hollies on his breast and brow that thrust their scarlet clusters through the snow, or spread their glossy leaves to transient rays the rebel glory of the icy days. Nor if, ere yet arisen, dim morning heard your light-heeled coursers paw the dewy sward, when the sly prowler stole adown the wind, and hoped he left no telltale scent behind. Vain hope, your swift staunch hounds the search began, to right and left their hurrying numbers ran, till found the taint, in streaming files they hie, and in one shrill continuous clamoring cry, to which the accordant forest joyous rings, hang on his rear, while o'er the vale he springs, dash through the rimy glades and round the hills, as when receiving tribute brooks and rills, o'er flinty bed a river foams and roars, loud and impatient of meandering shores, or, deepened, shews the sun his mirrored face, or zones with silver light the mountain's base. Now come with Mundy where the ruin lowers, he hymns the dirge of the devastated bowers. Echo his wailings o'er their fallen state, whom centuries hailed irregularly great. Come execrate the edict that destroyed, leaving time-hallowed Needwood bare and void. There fell imagination's rural fane, thence fled fair-shafted Dian's votive train, all which the bard, entranced in forest seas, satyrs and fauns and leaf-crowned Dryades. They fled when avarice with rapacious frown from Mercia's temples struck her sylvan crown. Yet, gentle minstrel, they whose raptured ears drank thy sweet song in the departed years, saw oaken wreaths thy auburn brows entwine, thy well-won meed at Needwood's shadowy shrine, shall find thy gratulation's vivid glow matched by the requiem in its mournful flow. The orb of Mundy's muse-illumined day, setting with rival though with milder ray, pleased shall compare the evening with the noon, and feel in equal power the cypress garland one. Anna Seward. Impromptu, to the author of the new poem entitled The Fall of Needwood, October 1808. When poesy, the child of zeal, who soothes each pang that earth can feel, beheld, at wounded nature's call, that scene of horror, Needwood's fall, she said, in haste to yield relief, and calm the mighty mother's grief, Nature, dear parent, power divine, whose joys and griefs are truly mine, to you my sympathy devotes, my cheerful and my plaintive notes. With feelings not to be suppressed, I view your lacerated breast, this waste of ravages where stood your sylvan wealth, your graceful wood. I cannot from the rifled earth call into sudden second birth the forest vanished from your sight, though once your pride and my delight. But I can raise in your distress a charm that scarce will soothe you less. Behold this proof of my regard in Needwood's fascinating bard. He whom our blended gifts engage to sing with youthful fire in age, he, Needwood, by whose breath you live, gives you whatever verse can give. He makes immortal in his songs your beauties all and all your wrongs. His verse displays a deathless charm that foils the force of havoc's arm. Age after age, while nymphs are found to breathe delight on English ground, the grateful dryads will admire the magic of their Mundy's lyre, and boast the wood he loved to praise, for ever verdant in his lays. W. Haley. End of Section 9, read by Gerald Moe, Tucker, Georgia. End of Needwood Forest by Francis Noel Clarke Mundy.